So I'm going to hand over to Tal, who's going to introduce himself and the rest of the people in the panel.
Hello everybody. So welcome to this session. My name is Tal Singh. I am the founder of an organisation called Soulbright, which was founded around 4 years ago when I went through my own mental health journey, hitting rock bottom around 5 years ago. So struggling with addiction, alcohol, living on my own, disconnected from family and friends, and really losing all hope at that point. And then asking for help. The first time in my life I asked for help, and that's when things started to change. So often we can be very stubborn as men asking for help. We can be reluctant in facing our problems. Looking into that mirror is very difficult. But there comes a point where we all have to do it. And I did it, and I'm better for it. So I'm glad I'm here today with a group of like-minded individuals to see where this wonderful journey we call life is going to take us. We don't know, do we? We really don't, but it's an adventure. We go out into the world and we see hills, we see mountains, we see the sun, we see lakes, we see animals, we see people laughing and joking and coming together. That's what life is. So how do we ride this wave of life when it's going up, when it's going well, but more importantly, when it comes crashing down? And we have to accept that the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of life are a natural process, a natural part of our life cycle. How do we come through that down cycle as men? You know, we're seen as the breadwinners, we're seen as the stable rock of society. How do we come through that? And especially as minority communities, is there extra pressure? That's a question I'm asking. Is there extra pressure on men from minority communities? I don't know the answer, but I can certainly speak from my own experience. I think there is. Coming from an Asian background, growing up in a Punjabi household, and we know, Wolverhampton has a big Punjabi population, the pressure of getting married, and then the pressure of having a kid and making sure that the kid is a boy, right? Make sure you have a boy, son. Yeah. And then buying a nice house, living in a nice area. Son, we want to see you in Techno. When you move to Techno, right? And when are you buying that BMW or Mercedes? You're going to have the German car, right? And the top job, right? So all of this pressure weighs heavy on our shoulders, and then add to that, we've got the responsibility of raising our families, becoming leaders in the workplace, and so this pressure can become too much, can come to a boiling point, and that's what happened with me. So we're going to talk about the nuances of coming from a marginalised community, whether it's Punjabi, whether it's the black community, and all the other different makeup of this city. How do we deal with it? Bring it in intersectionality, so things like neurodiversity, which is coming more to the fore. We've seen autism and ADHD and neurodiversity come into popular culture. And I can speak from personal experience. My brother still, I believe, remains undiagnosed. A lot of people remain undiagnosed with autism, but we know the traits are there. They're there. But there's a reluctance from ethnic minority communities to label it, because it brings shame. Oh, my son has got this illness. We rather not label it. Let's label it as a naughty. It's called a naughty child at school. He's just naughty. And how many other kids have this same issue that we don't know about? So I'm going to introduce our panel. We'll go round the sofa. And please, starting with you, sir, just introduce yourself, a bit about you, what's your name, where you're from, and what brought you here today.
Hello, everyone. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm not here anymore. I'm here. Hello, everyone.
My name is Maurice. I work with Artsmark. My colleague Paul, who was also on the panel today, we support male clients who've gone through domestic abuse, sexual violence, whether that's prehistoric, current, stalking. And my background comes from counselling, so I have a counselling background, worked in equality and diversity, and also worked with my charity organisation. So just in terms of my journey here, it's been a mixed variety of being able to support people with mental health, with emotional healing, energetic work, and yeah, it's pretty much what I do now, supporting men on an emotional level, a practical level, with a lot of trauma-informed aspect to that.
Thank you. Sir, yourself?
My name's Grantley Haynes. I started off life as a male, young black male in a household where my dad lived, my mother lived, and I had 3 siblings that were all female. So I used to play games with them, mess around. I used to also support them, when they had problems, all sorts of problems. You can imagine it yourself. But one time I was expected to fight for my sisters because they were encountering problems. And my mother said, go and sort the guy out. Now, part of me was pretty terrified really, because he was a lot bigger than me, and I thought, I'm going to deal with this. So that's one issue that men struggle with, because they're expected to do that. Now, imagine that as a child, and then you move on to the fact that men have to go to war and fight and defend a land that they might not understand. They have to fight for a country of people that probably don't like them. They have to fight for women that don't like them. Hold on to that thought, because that's where mental health can start. So we need to start repairing some of those issues. So I was quite fortunate after that little thing, and I went into the music business. I became a DJ. I became quite popular, and I met up with, I know I can say this, I met up with Pato Bantu, I met up with Tipperary, I met up with Aswan, UB40, a lot of them. Peter Spence, who lives in Wolverhampton, I believe, now. And I had a real journey. I went all over the world, and my sons were growing up. So I thought, I've got to help out here, because I don't know as much about them, or I'm not playing a part. Many broken relationships, but I didn't want to do the same with my sons. So I came back to the UK when they were about 8 and 9, and I was there for them. And to stay in the UK, I said, I better go and sign up to do a degree. So I signed up to do a degree, and I got really involved in it, and I thought it was the best thing for me. And straight after that degree, I went and did a master's degree in criminology, and that's where I found my calling. I can now work with different people, crime that I'd grown up with, had grown up around, had to fight in the manners. I then moved on, and I learned. I went to work for Birmingham City Council, working in the youth service, worked in residential care, worked in the constituency of Hodge Hill, and I then set up a crack and cocaine team that revolutionised the way people could access treatment for crack and cocaine use. where there was nothing before. So to me, that defines me, because I've done a lot of jobs. I've held a lot of positions, chair of organisations, CEO of organisations, but the British reggae music business is one, and the crack cocaine field in treatment is another. My name is Grantley Haynes.
Thank you very much, sir. And yourself, next, sir?
Thank you, everyone. My name's Leroy, and I feel like I'm in the shadows of a legend. Grantley, the way he's just introduced himself, which is amazing. You know, I've known this guy and met him a couple of years, many years ago. My background is I'm a mindset coach for men, but I have a career working across local authority, NHS, number of charities with a golden thread of mental health through it. So a lot of the young people, a lot of adults I've come into contact with, it is at early intervention stage where things may not be problematic and can be managed in the community, right through to crisis, inpatient, medication, psychiatry services and so forth. Another part of that thread is all of the people that I work with, I consider them human beings, firstly, but secondly, customers. And I have a vested interest in ensuring that customers have a voice in their care, have a voice in how services are designed around them, and have a voice in how they're run. You know, my work has spanned through Greater Manchester, Shropshire, Birmingham, and you know, one of the things that I like to make sure that I put across is the challenge back to the services. You know that services are overrun, under-resourced, but also it's about ensuring that you go and access something that you can access and it should be there for you. And I will fight for that as an individual for you, and I will fight if I'm working in an organisation or for my own business. This is a passion because we're all service users, we're all customers, and you know, no matter which way you look at it, we want to make sure that we get the best service whenever we go somewhere. And so why don't we do that when we have access to free healthcare? And that's where I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And yourself, next?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so my name is Amari. My name is Amari. I'm the founder of a company called Unorthodox Education. So my background has always been education. My mom was a teacher, well, she still is a teacher, a special ed teacher. And growing up watching her, I wanted to be in education, but I didn't want to be broke, essentially. So I thought I need to find a way to give what I have and also make something out of it. So I have a service which connects with SMEs and helps them to understand how to leverage government funding to grow skills within their workforce between 2 and 5 year periods. I focus on apprenticeships mostly, but it ranges from T-levels all the way up to commercial courses. So I'm an L&D consultant, but I focus on apprenticeships, if you will. So what brings me here today is I have lived experience of pretty much everything that's been mentioned. You mentioned ADHD and autism. I have both. So I got diagnosed with autism at 20. So that was 28 years not knowing why I was weird. And then they gave it a name, so I thought, great, but it doesn't tell me how to live. So one thing I want to talk about is if you have traits or if you are diagnosed, how do you go from learning about it to living with it? That's one thing. The second thing is I came to Birmingham originally because I was running from a domestic violence situation that my mum was in. Funny enough, I had a breakdown, well, mental breakdown in 2024, and I came back to Birmingham to heal from that. Bit of irony there, but essentially, about 2 years ago, I was bedridden, so I'm here standing in front of you now. I look fairly normal, but 2 years ago, I couldn't get out of bed. The only reason I was able to use the toilet was because I had an ensuite, and my sister made sure I was fed. So what I'm trying to say to you is, anyone in the room that's had a rock bottom or close to it, it's possible to get out of it. If you have autism, ADHD, sort of neurodiversity, or different neurotype from normal, it's possible to get out of it. If you come from a broken home, or one of your parents isn't there for whatever reason, it's possible to get out of it. So essentially, I'm coming more from a lived experience perspective. I have a faith, I follow God, I'm proud of it. So I will talk about that in my answers, but it's not necessarily something that you have to be doing to move forward. But if you hear me mention Christ, or if you hear me mention a relationship with God, it's because that's how I do life. But just take from me what I got, and that's it.
Great, fantastic, thank you for that, guys. So, we'll start at the beginning. As children growing up in what some people call a marginalised community, ethnic minority community, how do we perceive children that have got mental health issues at a very young age, whether it be autism, ADHD, which may manifest as hyperactivity or lack of attention in the classroom? From my experience, I've already mentioned that it's labelled as naughty child, or it may even be labelled as something, there's a spiritual condition with that child, right? And these inevitably bring up barriers when accessing mental health, because if you've got a teacher bringing in parents and you're discussing your child's behaviour, the parent, my parents were like, no, he's just naughty, he's just hyper, he drinks too much Coke, he eats too many sweets, it's the sugar, right? How do we as a community deal with these issues right from the beginning? So open to anybody.
I'll take it because I have it. So, one thing you said there, you said, how do we tackle mental health issues in children if they are, for example, autistic? But autism isn't a mental health condition, it's a neurotype. Someone with autism has mental health issues potentially because
You've got to lift the mic closer to you.
that's it. So someone with autism or ADHD, ADD, they might present with mental health issues because of severe frustration that they cannot be understood. If you speaking how you do, but the whole room understands English, or all of you understand English, yeah? I don't want to listen, but we all understand English. You were talking clearly in English. Let's say nobody here understood you. Can you work out why that is? Would you know? So the lack of maturity to understand that that's the case, the lack of recognition by your responsible adult, which is a technical term in medicine and social care, for someone that's responsible for the child. So we're talking about teachers, after caregivers, parents, older siblings. Nobody understands. So the frustration of that paired with the lack of maturity to deal with it creates the outburst. The outburst is the communication that's left for them to use to tell you something. So who's really got the mental health issue? I don't have one, just a child. So I think we have to differentiate between mental health issue, which is, and I've had those as well as a child. I've been in and out of therapy since I was 9 years old. I've been through every kind of abuse in terms of definition. You can work out what I mean by that. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's a difference between mental health and the incapability to communicate. It is grouped. So the issue starts there, differentiation.
I think that's a great, some great insight there. I think one of the things that I read about was people that have a neurodiverse brain. It came from prehistoric times when we were still living in caves. When there was a threat or a danger, we had those leaders or those individuals who could scan the environment and their brain worked in a different way, where they could see the threat, the saber-toothed tiger that was coming to, eat us. And so in those times, we needed that fight or flight response. And how it manifests, my brother explained to me, because when I look at a phone, because I see every little detail on that phone, like you'll miss little bits, because my brain sees every little bit of it in like high detail. And so they're almost processing a lot more information than the average person. And so, I support a young boy who has autism, and you're right that miscommunication can be quite prevalent, and both parties could have the best of intentions, but that unless you understand where they're coming from, it will present challenges. So I think we have to become more educated as a society, especially teachers, because how often in schools do teachers miss that? Right? You probably know yourself. Teachers were labelling you something else, potentially naughty child, like my brother, and they weren't actually getting to the issue. So I want to pass that question over to somebody else now. In general, when kids do have different mental health issues or are neurodiverse, how do we as a culture react to that? What's your view?
So I'll take this in terms of when we talk about different marginalised groups, there is that stigma that's attached to what a child could present as in terms of being showing to have a mental health condition. So there's that stigma there that there's something wrong, I haven't done something wrong, or I have done something wrong. I'm the reason, the parents might think they're the reason why the child is presenting in the way they do. Rather than, as you all said, is the education about it, but also the awareness within these marginalised communities not there often. So that when a child presents to have a mental health issue or just a challenging issue to do with neurodivergence, it's not categorized in a holistic approach, but it's more dissected to get into that. From a spiritual perspective, when we talk about communities in marginalised communities, and I'm from a indigenous background whereby we look at individuals who present with I can't say that now, my word's gone. Can you just repeat the word? Neurodiversion. There we go. We look at that as the ability to analyse and to decode things within our environment that particularly others aren't able to do. So we look at it as heightened intuition, heightened sensitivity, which it's not shunned, it's more of, it's taken into consideration as this person is a key part of our society that we must protect and provide a diverse approach in terms of how they learn and how we support them. So there's different layers to it, but I think ultimately stigma around what the presenting issues are within a child and within our community and within, from a black background as well, access to facilities, access to service is also a challenge when it comes onto that. So
100%. And I think we need to look at what are these therapeutic interventions, and it doesn't have to be medication or counselling. What worked really well for me was doing a bit of art, and for me that was my form of meditation, where I could focus all my energy, stop the overthinking and the anxiety, and for those 1 or 2 hours I was just engrossed in doing this painting, and that really helped me. I want to come to you, GT. In terms of music being a creative outlet, can that be a medium that we can use to help people come out of that dark place? And did it help you in any way, or and were the people that you worked with that it helped come out of that life, whether it was gang life or whether there were mental health issues that inevitably come with that culture as well? How can music be a force for good?
Music is always going to be a force for good. Always. And the reason why I say that is because every one of us in here are driven by some type of music. We hear a song and it takes us to a place or a time or a space, whether that's a good place, whether that's a bad place, or whether that's the best place in the world for us. It takes us there, and that's what a singer does, or a songwriter does, when they start putting pen to paper, or they begin to perform, because we get inspired by performances. Similarly, what you talked about was perfect, and all of you talked about is, you talked about specific therapeutic interventions. When I talk to clients, I don't talk about a therapeutic intervention. I talk about, what do you want to do? You like art? You like music? Yeah? What do you want? Because the therapeutic interventions is for my colleagues, my consultants, my people who've gone through study. But children that are in gangs, they don't understand what a therapeutic intervention is. They understand what they want. And what they want is the first question you might ask. But in order to get to what they want, and it's no different for an adult, first you have to seek first to understand, do I really want to understand this person? Have I got the time? Do I want to even talk to them? Can I connect with them? Do they want to listen to me? And if they do, and if you've got that ability to connect, you connect. And that relationship will grow, because they'll want to see you every time they walk into that building or walk into that space, because you've done something to them. You've given them something that they probably have never had. So then you ask them, then it's your job to listen. If you really want to help anybody, and women perhaps know this better than men, but men know it to a different extent, you first have got to use what I learned this when I toured in the US, and I went to the Indian reservation. It was a Hopi Indian reservation. And he said to me, there's the Indian talking stick. And he said, and once you've got that talking stick, right, you speak, everybody else listens. And the only thing they can do when you finish speaking is ask you questions for clarification. If you do that to your partners, your children, they will listen to you. That's the best I can do in a very short space of time to answer your question.
So moving on slightly, it's well documented that men from minority communities have higher rates of detention under the Mental Health Act. Do mental health services understand the culture, the nuances, especially when you are being detained under the Mental Health Act? You've got the police involvement, the mistrust there. How can we improve our services, our mental health services that work alongside the police to ensure that rates of detention come down? Because it is the worst case scenario when you detain somebody under that act. We want earlier intervention. What can we do?
I'll jump in there. Early intervention is an opportunity for everybody, and sometimes these opportunities slip people by because their friends, family haven't pressed the button. And I think that's a really crucial part of this. Friends and family are closest most of the time to this individual who may be suffering. Black people are 3.5 times more likely to be detained in the mental health system. Now, that's a challenging figure, and myths and rituals seem to be a factor in some communities why they won't access mental health services. Now, in terms of services, do services listen to customers? No. Are they beginning to listen to customers more, as in the community? Yes. There are organisations that are specifically designed culturally to meet individual needs. Grantley mentioned something about the arts. There are organisations who are designing their arts to be more culturally sensitive, to respond more to their communities. Catalysts for Change in Birmingham are challenging the existing mental health system by ensuring that artists, a range of artists, are going into psychiatric units. We have an organisation in Wolverhampton called ACCI. That's been around for 30 years. That's a community-based organisation. Now, there isn't this specific organisation for every type of community. That's the problem. They're not always going to run like the NHS runs. The NHS is just a machine at the moment that holds people. It's becoming a place where they will listen more, but that's not necessarily the end of the story. It's about ensuring that those voices are enabling the services to change, and within NHS trusts, within third sector organisations, this is being listened to more, but not enough. You can now go to the theatre, any theatre in the UK, and you may see a play around mental health and challenges in family. 10 years ago, not a chance. So this topic is creeping into the mainstream culture. We've got a room full of people here. Next year, they'll be twice as full, because we know that people are starting to talk about these topics, marginalisation, neurodiversity, and access. I remember when I was diagnosed back in 2010 with dyslexia and dyscalculia, I didn't know what to do. I was a professional, thinking, no wonder this is why I've been thinking differently and working differently to everybody else. I had to accept myself after that diagnosis, but the reality is it didn't necessarily change my journey. It just became an additional element to my personality, which I understand more. And I think that's a really crucial point as well. It's about educating people about who they are, what they're capable of, not telling them what they're not capable of. So to answer the question, yes, services are changing. We have to talk up about services. We have to recognise that we have an individual responsibility to our fellow man or woman.
Okay, can I just, I'm mindful of the time, can I just add to that, just in terms of early intervention, I think one of the key things that we need to be able to bring into the conversation is the fact that collaboration with multiple agencies is important. Say for example, a person who's mentally challenged and the police is called out, the questions that are asked are not there. Does this person have a mental health condition? It's always at now, and then we pick up the pieces later. And I think the multiple agency intervention and asking those key questions is going to be life-changing for a lot of marginalised people. Because, for example, you see a black man, well-built, going through mental health, the police comes out, we need to, restrain this person, and that could lead to, we've all seen it, lead to death and serious injuries. So I think how we approach that collaborative relationship is going to be key. And we as men have to lead that conversation. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we need to be able to get that message out there about these questions being asked, because we can't have this going on. So,
I agree, but I'm going to add this caveat. The caveat is, and what I mean by caveat for those who don't know, the issue is this: we start this issue. If we've got a family member, a friend, or an individual that we even have seen walking up and down the streets that we feel might have a mental health problem, or feel that there might be an issue that we don't understand, the first step is to say and to act. Get more information, find out a little bit more, connect with that individual, and find out what we do in order to help that individual. we don't do it is the answer. We don't, because we fear that, guess what, they're going to look at me as I'm somebody who's causing a problem. I might be the one who's causing this issue. But later on, the individual walks up and down this high street with a knife and takes somebody's head off. That's when we now say, oh, they was acting a little bit funny 3 years ago or 2 years ago. At that point, that's not the way. They were smoking crack cocaine, or they were smoking heroin, or they were smoking weed, which isn't weed because there's 70 odd or 80 odd different strains for weed right now, and not every one of us knows how to interact with that person. It's our job to intervene, to get involved, because we know the person, we can talk to them, but we leave it till the police turn up when there's a big strapping man. And the police can do the only thing that they can do sometimes, which is to respond in numbers, because they don't want to get hurt. Think about these things. That's where it needs to start. We owe it to ourselves, our friends, our families, and the neighbours we have. And we are each other's neighbours.
That's great. It was a great point to finish on. So we are running a little bit short on time, so thank you for your participation. Over to audience questions if you've got any.
Don't be shy, folks.
That was a very enlightening talk by everybody. I just want to share this because I could resonate with a lot of you, but when I was young, coming from an Asian family, I had that sort of stigma. I was very suppressed. I'm a video gamer by heart, and I'm still a video gamer since 3, but I was told, no, you shouldn't do that because, you know, it's for little kids. And I was like what you mentioned, whenever there was trouble, I had to stand up for the family. I was told, oh, go and sort it out, it's the aggressive way. I've been doing martial arts for 34 years, and I've learned that actually you've got to be calm and sort of dissuade from that. So I was very sort of repressed and told that I've got to live the traditional way and sort of get a job, kids and all that, and the pressure was on. But now I've learned, like many other men, that, do you know what, stopping for yourself and sort of even being in feminine energy is one of the most healthiest things you can do. So, you know, that was just amazing what you guys spoke about there.
Well done. Well done.
Well done. Thanks for speaking it, because people want to hear what you've got to say.
Somebody said that music's always a source of good. My question is about some of the young boys who listen to a certain style of music and playing out certain actions on the back of the music they listen to. Would you say that's because of the music itself or the reality that they live?
How many of us in here grew up listening to music and was influenced by music? Hands, give me a show of hands. Right. For a start off, that's what they're doing. Now, what we had at that time was we had other influences, parents, friends, teachers, good people around us that gave us different information that balanced our view. You know, I grew up and my uncle said, don't buy a car to impress women, buy a van to build yourself a company, to build yourself a job. All right? Now, you can understand the philosophy behind that if you take the chance. But to me, what we have to do is we have to kind of look at our kids as they're growing up, or our neighbours' kids, and we have to present them with a challenge. Why are you doing what you're doing? Just a quick question, why? Come here, have a chat with me. Why are you doing what you're doing? That's not the way to get what you want, or that's not the way, or the only way to get what you want, because you might get it today, but long term, you're going to get prison, or you might get seriously hurt, or you might end up dead. You need to choose. Somebody needs to have that conversation. So what they're listening to is one of the voices that they're hearing. If that's the only voice, then they're going to replicate what they're hearing, and that will become their focus.
Can I just add to that? So just in terms of the style of music, so music, as we all know, it evokes a feeling, an emotion, it reminds you of places, people and things, right? So just in terms of frequency-wise, based on what they're listening, it could be a response to trauma, it could be a response to trying to get their voice heard as well. But I'm also very mindful in the work that I do, the energetic side of things, that frequency has such an impactful part of our DNA and how we respond in situations. So allowing people and young people to be open to a variety of frequency is also healthy. I wouldn't say take away one genre of music and replace it with the next, because that's better. I think being able to be open to that diversity of frequency helps us to channel our energies in a productive way and also help us to heal. So a variety of frequency in music is required. So if you see young people and you can open their eyes to other aspects of music and opera, for example. If you've ever listened to opera, right, it's so calming, right, and it changed your mindset. If you listen to rap, it gives a different effect. So yes, and I think this in education is key. So there we go.
That's great. So we're getting the wrap-up signal, so I think we're done. Thank you everybody for listening and taking part. And again, feel free to mingle afterwards with the group here. Thank you.
But before you all run off, where's my helper? There he is. Do you know what? This subject here, and a lot of the subjects we've been looking at have been really quite intense, quite deep. So do you know what? This goes back to the essence of man, which I started in the beginning. A lot of our men, they don't get their flowers until they've moved into the next life. So we have decided to give you your flowers now as we celebrate you on this International Men's Day. So,
Nice touch, isn't it?
can I just move that down? You know, I need some steps with you. Has everybody got some of you guys at the back? So yeah, and also as well, just quickly, everybody stand up for me. Stand up, stand up, stand up. And we're all just going to breathe. So I want you to breathe in and count to 3 as you're breathing in. And when you release, just count 4. So, 1, 2, 3. Release. And again. Release. Hold it for a moment. Not your breath, that is just. And then let's shake it out. Come on, everybody, shake it out, shake it out. Now, go for a break and say hi to somebody you haven't met before.